What made Spartan warriors nearly unbeatable? It wasn't just muscles or swords, it was the shield. Strong, smart, and built for battle. Today, we're trying to make one in just 2 hours. No fancy tools, no ancient secrets, just speed, sweat, and a race against time. Can we pull it off? Alright, let's take a trip back in time to ancient Greece and imagine what it was like to make a Spartan shield. Spoiler alert, it was no walk in the park. In fact, it was probably more like a long, sweaty slog through a nightmare that you couldn't escape. Back then, everything was hard, nothing was easy, and most things were so brutal, they could make you question your life choices. So step into the ancient world of Spartan shield making and see how far we've come with today's much easier methods. Let's start with the wood, which was the very foundation of the Spartan shield. The Greeks didn't have access to nice, smooth, pre-cut plywood from your local hardware store. No, they had to make do with poplar, willow, or linden wood. Now, here's how it breaks down. Poplar sounds great until it bends like a wet noodle. Willow's light, sure, but one hit and it's ready to fall apart. Linden holds up a bit better, but honestly, it's still not something you'd trust to stop a spear. Yet, that's what the ancient Greeks did. They had to cut down these trees by hand, then chop the wood into the shape of a large circular disc. And here's the twist. They had no fancy saws, no power tools, and definitely no safety goggles. It was a good old-fashioned, back-breaking, callus-inducing kind of woodwork. And don't even get me started on the smell. The air would have been thick with the scent of freshly cut wood and sweat, the kind of wood smell that made you want to run far, far away from it. If you think building a treehouse is hard, imagine trying to create a shield that would weigh you down in battle with nothing but basic tools. You'd probably start questioning why you ever picked up the idea of fighting in the first place. Now that we've dealt with the basic structure, it's time to talk about the metal part of the shield. The outer layer was made of bronze, which, to be honest, was heavy and incredibly tough to work with. They didn't just slap a thin sheet of shiny material on there. No, the Greeks had to hammer the bronze into shape. Imagine taking a giant piece of metal and pounding it with a hammer for hours, trying to shape it to fit the wooden base, while also dealing with the heat from the forge. You'd be sweaty, tired, and probably questioning all of your life choices up until that point. This wasn't some easy process where you throw a piece of metal into a machine and it comes out all perfect and shiny. Number. They had to hammer and mold that metal by hand, possibly for hours or even days, just to get it to look remotely decent. The end result was a shiny, intimidating piece of metal that could blind your enemies in battle, if you weren't too busy dealing with your own exhaustion to even raise the shield in the first place. So, while today you can just pop over to your local supplier and grab a sheet of aluminum, back then, they had to make do with the sweat of their brow and the strength of their arms. Bronze was a pain to work with, and if you wanted it to look nice and polished, you needed to be prepared to spend some serious time and energy on it. But hey, it worked for intimidation, and that's half the battle, right? Next up, we have the leather. You might think leather is a soft, luxurious material. Not in ancient Greece. The leather used for the inside of a Spartan shield wasn't soft and smooth like the leather couch you're sitting on. It was tough, rough, and not exactly something you want to press against your skin for hours. This leather was meant to hold the shield in place, and it was there to make sure the shield didn't fall off your arm during battle. It was also meant to make holding the shield slightly more bearable. To make sure the leather stayed in place, the Greeks didn't have stitching machines or modern glue. No, they had to stitch it by hand, probably with the same tools they used for leather shoes. Imagine sitting there, stitching through thick, tough leather, your fingers aching with every movement. It wasn't the kind of stitching you'd do while binge-watching your favorite TV show on a comfy couch. This was stitching with a purpose, to make sure you didn't lose your shield in the middle of a battle which would be terrible for your health. The leather was then used to make the grip, called antilabe, and an arm strap, porpax, consisting of an arm strap and a hand grip. These were meant to help you hold onto the shield while you fought. But don't get too excited. These weren't cushioned, ergonomic grips designed for comfort. No, these were simple leather straps that dug into your arm and palm like they were determined to remind you that nothing in life is ever easy. Now, fast forward to the present day. Today, we've got all sorts of modern materials that make the process of building a Spartan shield look like a joke. Plywood, for one, has become the go-to material. It's cheap, it's easy to cut, and you don't need to chop down trees in your backyard to get it. Just grab a pre-cut disc, slap on some glue, and you're ready to roll. Plywood is light, durable, and doesn't smell like a forest after a storm. It's everything ancient Greeks could have ever dreamed of, but sadly, they didn't have it. As for the metal, we're not dealing with tough, hard to work with bronze. Now, you can use thin sheets of aluminum or steel, which are lightweight and much easier to handle. Cutting them is as easy as using a pair of scissors, or in some cases, metal shears. And you don't need a blacksmith to mold it into shape. The metal just bends to your will like clay. As for the leather today, we have soft, comfortable leather that doesn't make your arms scream for mercy. And if you're feeling extra fancy, you can use synthetic leather that's just as durable but without the discomfort. Plus, you can glue the leather in place so you don't need to spend hours stitching it by hand. The modern world has truly spoiled us. Time to talk about tools. Back in ancient Greece, the Greeks were stuck with chisels, hammers, and other crude tools. They had to grind their shields by hand, working tirelessly with tools that were basically designed to make everything harder. They didn't have a power sander to smooth out the rough edges. They didn't have drills to make perfect holes for the straps. They had to do everything the hard way. Today, we've got belt sanders, drills, saws, and all sorts of fancy tools that make the process of building a shield feel like a walk in the park. The belt sander alone could smooth out your shield in a fraction of the time it would take to do it by hand. And don't even get started on drills. They make adding straps and fittings so easy, it's hard to imagine how anyone managed without them. Alright folks, time to build a Spartan shield in 2 hours. Forget ancient struggles and enjoy modern tools while you channel your inner Greek warrior. It's not easy, but hey, you're doing it with power tools, not chisels, so skip the long process and get this shield done fast. Dive in, because who wants to spend forever crafting when you could finish and still be in time for dinner? Now, here's the thing. The Spartan warriors were known for being tough. These guys didn't just stroll into battle with a ready-made shield from Amazon. Oh no, they had to make their own. And they didn't have a fancy sawmill or automated woodcutting machines. They chopped down trees, cut the wood by hand, and then sanded it down until it was smooth. Think of the wooden core as the canvas of your masterpiece. You're not carving the finest art in the world with a chisel, you're just working with a circular piece of wood that's a whopping 36 inches in diameter. We're talking a hunk of wood big enough to shield a grown man, but light enough to throw into a battle formation. So, you've got your wood. Now you need to make it dome-shaped. That's right, a dome. Sounds easy, right? Wrong. You're not chiseling away in slow motion like a craftsman from the 5th century BC. You're using a modern-day belt sander. You're basically playing God with your shield's shape, grinding it into submission like you're auditioning for an ancient woodshop class. As the dust flies and the sander roars like a chainsaw, you'll remember that ancient Greeks didn't have power tools. Nope, they probably used a rock or a handheld scraper, working for days in the sun. But hey, we've got 30 minutes, so let's make it snappy. And don't forget the edges. Sand those down, or you might as well be handing someone a splinter factory on a stick. Next up, we've got to add the fancy part of the shield, the metal facing. Ancient Greeks used bronze, shiny, tough, and perfect for causing panic in enemy ranks. You know how it feels when the sun hits a car bumper and it flashes in your eyes? Well, ancient warriors were probably looking to do that to their enemies, making them squint and wonder if they were about to be cleaved in half. The idea is that the shiny metal facing would intimidate the opponent before they even got close. Now, here's where things get interesting. You don't have a blacksmith forge ready to shape your bronze. Instead, you're going to use thin metal sheets. This is a time-saving miracle compared to the poor ancient Greeks who probably spent days waiting for a blacksmith to finish hammering out a piece of metal in a fire hotter than the sun itself. So, you cut your metal sheet to match the shield's 36-inch diameter. No pressure, right? Now, you take your hammer or press, whatever you've got lying around, and shape the metal to fit the curved wood. It's not as glamorous as ancient craftsmanship, but hey, at least you're not sweating it out in a forge. Once it fits, you secure it with some adhesive or nails. Maybe don't go too crazy on the hammering because we're not trying to split the wood in half. Here's a fun thought. The ancient Greeks didn't have glue. Nope. They would have had to use animal-based adhesives or resin from trees. Just picture them slathering sticky goo on a hot metal sheet while battling flies and frustration. Meanwhile, you're over here with modern adhesive, watching your shield come together in half an hour. It's almost too easy. Now comes the leather lining. This part's all about comfort, or at least it's supposed to be. Because you're not just slapping some metal on wood and calling it a day. No, you need arm straps and hand grips. Without these, you're just carrying around a giant, cumbersome dinner plate. Back in the day, the Greeks didn't have fancy padded gloves. They had leather straps wrapped around their arms, tightly fastened with little to no cushion, hoping their arms didn't get shredded in the process. But lucky you, you've got leather strips. You cut them to fit the inner side of your shield and attach them to create a hand grip called anti-labe and an arm strap. Paw packs. The funny thing that the ancient Greeks probably stitched this stuff by hand using crude tools. You're either stitching it in minutes or using modern adhesives. I'm sure they would have loved to swap their needles for a glue gun or some industrial strength thread. Okay. So your shield is functional, but it's a little plain. Time to add some decorations. You know, for the cool factor. Spartan shields often bore the lambda symbol, the letter for Laconia, which is fancy talk for Sparta. You could add other designs too if you feel artistic, though I would suggest skipping anything too intricate. Remember, we've got 15 minutes, and honestly, after all the sanding, hammering, and gluing, you're probably not in the mood to get your paintbrush out and start crafting a miniature Mona Lisa on your shield. Still, in ancient times, they had no fast art supplies. They had to work with what they had. Probably a basic paint mix and whatever free time they could scrounge between battles. Meanwhile, you're applying the symbol with a Sharpie, or maybe a brush, if you're feeling fancy. A simple, quick design ensures that you don't overdo it, and the Spartan vibes are still intact. Now it's time to put everything together. Arm straps, hand grips, and the ideal weight. Somewhere between 13.5 to 18 pounds. Hopefully that's right, because if not, you're definitely going to feel it in battle, my friend. Make sure the straps are sturdy enough for a battle stance and comfortable enough that you can actually hold the thing without cutting off circulation. And finally, the moment of truth, the balance check. You don't want a shield that's off-kilter, especially if you plan on using it in the phalanx formation. Back in the day, they didn't have the luxury of easily checking a shield's weight. But you've got the technology to test that sucker. And if it's off, you've got a modern-day adjustment that Spartans could only dream of. Rewind a bit and take a look at how this shield would have been built in ancient Greece. Spoiler alert, it took days, not hours, days. The wood needed curing to prevent it from splintering during battle, which takes time. It's not like today, where you can grab a pre-cut wooden disc, slap some metal on it, and call it a day. No. The ancient Greeks were probably spending more time just letting their wood cure than we spend building the entire shield today. Then, you've got the metal forging. You know, hammering bronze in a furnace until it's just the right shape to give your enemy nightmares. A process that didn't involve a quick trip to Home Depot for supplies. And then, of course, there's the leather. It had to be tanned by hand, cut to size, and stitched in place. Imagine doing all that without the magic of modern power tools. It was a literal grind. Now it's time to talk about the modern day conveniences we've got. And by conveniences, I mean shortcuts that make you wonder how anyone survived the so-called good old days. Pre-cut wooden discs. Absolutely. No need to wait for the wood to cure, just grab one that's ready, sand it down with a power sander. Because who has time for manual labour, and you're already halfway there. As for metal, forget forging it yourself like some ancient craftsman. Just grab thin metal sheets and cut them to size with barely any effort. No furnaces, no blistered hands. The whole bronze polish thing. Skip it. Just a quick buff here, a fast rub there, and you've got a perfectly intimidating shield. Sure, it's not historically accurate, but with better tools on hand, who's really keeping track? As for the leather lining, well, the ancient Greeks had to tan it by hand, scrape it, and pray they didn't mess up. You know, the kind of thing that makes you question your life choices. But today, leather is pre-tanned and ready to go. Just cut it, glue it, and voila. Instant comfort. No animal skins, no smelly tanning process. No one's getting their hands dirty here. And while the ancient Greeks had to sew and stitch by hand, we get to glue and staple. It's fast food shield making. Quick, easy, and zero mess. Now, about that 2-hour limit. Ancient shields took days to make. They were crafted with sweat, effort, and a whole lot of patience. But today, we've got just 2 hours to make something that's supposed to be a warrior's essential piece of gear. In 2 hours, you can't really expect authentic quality. And yet, we're all over here acting like we're time travelers with magical tools, getting the same end result in less time and way less effort. It's almost as if the whole process of forging, curing, and tanning was just a suggestion for how to make a shield. Who has time for all that? We've got important things to do, like scrolling through Instagram. Don't forget about safety. Our tools might be modern and super efficient, but they're also incredibly dangerous if used the wrong way. You'll be using a belt sander, which is basically a power tool version of a chainsaw. Ever used one? It'll take your hand off faster than you can say, ancient craftsmanship. Those metal shears, sharp enough to cut through anything, including your fingers. You might be building a shield in 2 hours, but you're also tempting fate. And don't even get me started on drills. They're fantastic for quick assembly, but one wrong move, and you've got yourself a new hole in your hand. The ancient Greeks didn't have these power tools, but at least they didn't have to worry about taking out a finger on the job. And there you have it. Your Spartan shield built in record time. Think you can do better or want to see more epic challenges? Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let's see if you've got what it takes to conquer the ancient world with modern style.